Okay, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, and of course, that is fractions. And some of you are already laughing at my video and saying, "What are you talking about fractions? I hate fractions. I don't want to deal with fractions." Well, I get it. That was a little bit of a joke, and maybe I should just stick with math and not try to go into comedy. But listen, hey, if we got to learn something like fractions, let's try to have fun because, your attitude is going to make a huge difference in how well you learn something. And this particular video is just going to be an introduction on fractions. But listen, if you've been struggling with fractions, that's quite normal. A lot of students don't like to deal with fractions, but we have to master these things because fractions are everywhere in mathematics. And you can see here, I'm going to be using some graphical models to help us understand fractions. But before we get going, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher. I'm going to leave a link to my math help program in the description of this video. But I've been teaching math for decades, and it's come to, I come to the belief that anyone and everyone can be successful in mathematics. But what you need is two things. One, you need to be willing to put in the work. But two, you need super clear and understandable instruction. And I think I have that kind of teaching style that you will understand. So if you're at the middle school, high school, or even college level, I can definitely help you out in your respective math courses. Now, if you happen to be preparing for some sort of test with a math section, and there's a ton of them out there, I'm talking about things like the GED, SAT, ACT, maybe like a teacher certification exam, or maybe the ASVAB exam if you're going in the military. I have a huge library of test prep courses that could help you out. If you homeschool, my middle and high school math courses were just voted #1 by a major homeschool publisher. Very, very proud of that achievement. And if you need some math notes, I'm going to leave links to my math notes in the description of this video. But let's get into fractions. And let me ask you real quick, put into the comment section, how well do you think you know fractions? Okay, do you feel like you know like pretty much everything? If you saw fraction problems, i.e., multiplication, addition problems, how do you think your current fraction knowledge is? Put that in. Do you feel like you can stand a review? If you're watching this video, it probably indicates that you do need a quick refresher. But let's get to it. Okay, so this is just an informal, quick power lesson, but let's talk about what a fraction is. Well, basically, a fraction is a way to express a part out of a whole. Okay, that's basically what a fraction is. So let's take a look at this situation right here, and let's see how many boxes we have. Well, we have one, two, three, four, five, six boxes. Okay, now of these little boxes, how many is filled in? Well, one. Okay, so we have one box here, and we have a total of six boxes. So a way that we could represent this part out of this whole is 1 over 6. Okay, now again, when we write a fraction, the part is in this top part. I'm going to talk about this terminology here in a second. And then here, the bottom number represents the whole. So here we have 1 and we have 6 as our whole. So we have a total of 6 boxes, but one of them is filled out. So 1 out of 6 is highlighted in yellow, and that's just basically what a fraction is. It just expresses a part out of a whole. Okay, so let's take a look at this circle here. So how many little slices do we have? We have one, two, three, four. So again, we have a total of four, okay, slices that represent this circle, okay? But how many of these slices are highlighted? Just one, okay? So that's one part out of four. So I could represent what's going on here by the fraction 1/4, okay? So if you understand that, then you're kind of well on your way of understanding fractions. But let's kind of, take this to the next step and kind of get a little bit more formal in our terminology. So here again, a fraction represents a part out of a whole. So here is our 1/6. Now we would say this you could say this 1 over 6 or 1/6 like that. And you can write your fraction as 1. Then you could write like a horizontal line. It's also stylistically okay to go 1 with a little slash line like this, 1/6, and you can even, I've seen people go like this, 1/6, like so. I would say try to be, if you don't know what to do, I would suggest using this kind of format. But if you use an angle to represent your part out of a whole, that's perfectly fine as well, 1/6, okay? All right, so let's talk about these numbers again. So the top number here, it represents the part, but that has a name to it, okay? The top number in a fraction, we call that the numerator, okay? The numerator. So this is terminology you need to know if you don't already know it. And the bottom number, okay, in this case, it represents, it's the whole. In this case, it's 6. That's called the denominator, all right? So we got the numerator and the denominator. The numerator is always that top value, and the denominator is always the bottom value of a fraction. Okay, so here we go. We have 1/6. So this is the numerator, and 6 is the denominator. All right, so that's basically that. But let's go ahead and start messing around with our little graphical model here. And let's construct fractions for what's going on here. So here is our little rectangle that's broken up in little boxes. Again, we have how many boxes? We have a total of 6 boxes, okay, that here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But how many are we kind of marking here or highlighting? Well, we have 1, 2, and 3, right? So we have 1, 2, and 3. So how can we write a fraction to represent what's going on here? Okay, so we have 3 parts out of a total of 6. So our parts is 3, okay, our whole is 6. All right, so this would represent the fraction 3/6. But if we look at it, okay, this rectangle, it looks like maybe like 1/2 of this is being highlighted, right? So it's like, well, this looks like, 1/2, because this is half and this is another half. So we have 3 here and 3 here. So why isn't this fraction 1/2? Well, in this particular fraction, we're writing it as 3/6. But something that you do when we work with fractions is we simplify fractions. And that process of simplifying fractions is called reducing, okay? So although we can express the part out of the whole here, 3/6, we can write this 3/6 in a simpler fraction, okay, which is 1/2. And I'm going to show you how we got to 1/2 here in 1 second, because we're saying, well, if I'm highlighting half of these boxes, this really is like representing 1/2 of what's going on here, okay, and that's true. But we need to understand that 3/6 mathematically has the same value as 1/2. So when you have a fraction, you always want to simplify and reduce your fraction. So let's see how this happened here. So 3/6, we can write this as 3. The numerator is 3/6 is the same thing as 3 times 2. Okay, 3 times 2. And actually, 3, I'm going to put another factor up here. 3 is the same thing as 3 times 1. Okay, now we're talking about factors when any two numbers or two or more numbers are being multiplied together. What we can do is cross cancel like factors. So if we have a number, one factor in the numerator, and we find that same exact factor in the denominator, we can literally just take and cross cancel them like this. All right, so this 3 will cross cancel with that 3, and I'm left with 1/2. Okay, so again, one of the things that you need to know how to do when you're learning about fractions is simplify and reduce fractions. But again, the main idea here is having you understand that this fraction, this representation, 3/6, this part of the whole, is equivalent to the fraction 1/2. Okay, so let's move into our next little example here. So here I have all the boxes highlighted. So I have 6 boxes here in my little rectangular model. So how many parts are highlighted? Well, 6 are highlighted. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 parts are highlighted. How many total boxes do we have? 6. So 6 out of 6 are highlighted. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. Okay, so this is just one whole. So hopefully you kind of understand, basically, the whole idea, the concept of representing parts out of wholes using fractions, using expressions where we have a numerator and denominator. Okay, so let's get in to some more interesting things about fractions. And let's take a look at our circle here. And let's represent what's going on with this model. So we have our slices. We have our circle with our 4 slices. And you can see this circle has one, two, three, four slices being highlighted, right? So that it has how many parts out of a whole? Well, all four parts out of a total of four, okay, which represents the whole. 4 out of 4 are being highlighted, okay? But it looks like I want to add this to this kind of situation, and this is one, okay, of our slice being highlighted. So one part out of a total of 4 parts are being highlighted. So if I wanted to kind of do this fraction addition problem, I would say, okay, 4 out of 4 plus 1 out of 4. How much total do we have? Well, 4 out of 4, 4 divided by 4 is 1. Okay, so this is the same thing as 1 plus 1/4. And the way we write that, 1 plus 1/4, we write this as something called in a mixed number fraction. So 1 plus 1/4 is the same thing as 1 and 1/4. Okay, so if you see like 2 and 2/3, that's the same thing as 2 plus 2/3. Okay, all right, so that's called a mixed number fraction. So let's go ahead and wrap it up by talking about the type of fractions that you're going to be dealing with when you study fractions. And there's basically 3 types. We have a proper fraction, improper fraction, and a mixed number fraction. So let's start with the proper fraction. Matter of fact, let me just ask you, what's the difference between a proper and improper fraction? Hopefully you can kind of tell by these examples. But if you said, well, the proper fraction, it looks like the numerator is smaller than the denominator, okay? So if, here, let's put the numerator and denominator. If the denominator is greater than the numerator, you have a proper fraction, something like 2/3. Well, if you have the reverse, okay, if you have the numerator and it's greater than the denominator, like in this situation, 5/2, this right here, we would describe this as an improper, not improper, improper. Boy, you see, I'm going to stick with math and not English. Definitely don't check out my spelling or grammar tutorials. That's why I don't make any of those type of videos on YouTube. Improper fraction, when the numerator is greater than the denominator. Now, the interesting thing about an improper fraction is that we can write it as a mixed number fraction. And the way we do that is we can just take this 5 and divide it by 2, and that'll be a separate lesson in of itself. But let's go ahead and just wrap this up and talk about our last type of fraction. Of course, that is the mixed number fraction, something like 3 and 1/2. And of course, that means the same thing as 3 plus 1/2. Okay, so we got proper, improper, and mixed number fractions. But listen, if you understand all of this, then you're well on your way to really establishing a foundation of learning about fractions. Think of, like, anything you do like a little house. Okay, so here is a nice little house. Here's my little art skills in action right now. Here is the door. Here's our little foundation, etc. Right? So anytime you're learning anything, you need to set a strong foundation. Okay, you got to get the basics down. And too often students, they think like, I don't need to do the basics. I already know that stuff. Well, oftentimes, if you're struggling in anything in mathematics, it's because you have a weak foundation or there's cracks in your foundation. Maybe you know a lot, but you don't know everything. So anytime you're struggling in mathematics, you need to go back and review the basics, set your foundation, and then you can add all the different skills on top of this. So in terms of fractions, what are the different skills that you need to know? Well, we need to know how to add fractions, subtract fractions, multiply fractions, divide fractions, reduce fractions, how to convert a fraction to a decimal, decimal to a fraction, all sorts of different things. But, you know, I think a model like this, if you keep this in mind, will help you, serve you when you are having difficulty in mathematics. But at the same token, if you understood all this, you're like, no, I got this. Well, then let me go ahead and give you a nice little happy face with a good old 1982 Mohawk haircut, because that was a pretty cool haircut way back in the day. Matter of fact, I don't think it even classifies. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you an A plus and 100%. I don't think this classifies as a haircut. It's just really people's long hair being hairsprayed up. And we used a lot of hairspray in the 1980s. Matter of fact, too much. Unfortunately, probably caused some of our climate change problems. Who knows? But anyways, nice job. Okay, pretty impressive, like that 1982 Mohawk haircut. But here's the deal. Okay, watching me talk about fractions is not the same thing as you learning and mastering fractions. You have to follow through and practice. That's the only way you're going to really build your knowledge up. So let me give you a couple suggestions. One, I have a ton of videos on fractions on my YouTube channel, but I also have two courses in my math library that I would recommend. One is my pre-algebra course that have a full chapter on fractions, and my math foundations course where I go into even more basic math to include fractions. I'm talking about things like decimals, place value, and everything else. So whatever level of mathematics you are, both of those courses would work. But if this little video helps you out, go ahead and consider smashing that like button. That definitely helps me out. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, hopefully you'll consider subscribing. I've been on YouTube for 10 plus years, have over 1,000+ math videos from basic math to advanced math like calculus and everything in between. So please take advantage of all my content if you like my teaching style, but my best math help will always be within my math help program. Okay, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.